This is normally a selectmen's meeting, but tonight, instead of having a typical selectmen's meeting, we have opted to have a workshop. So we have the selectmen here. We're missing one. Russ Hoffman couldn't make it tonight. Usually in a workshop, workshop is a time for people to air or discuss their ideas and list any concerns they have, and it's a time for discussion. Normally in a workshop, it's not a time to make any decisions, so I don't expect that any decisions will be made tonight. Those will be made at another selectmen's meeting. The point of the workshop was really to discuss some ideas for the area that was formerly known as the tennis courts. We've been talking about this for quite some time, and I'm actually going to ask Bill to give us a little, since he was so kind to put together a little outline and history of the work that we've been doing around this tennis courts that really started in kind of in the middle of 2013, which was actually 2 years ago. So if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
Great.
I couldn't help myself. I went back through the records and put together a brief history of the tennis courts.
He couldn't help himself.
The first that I could detect that the Board of Selectmen discussed this was in July of 2013, so just over 2 years ago. And not shortly after that, in September of that year, the town, represented by the town manager, Tom Wooden, met with the school, the tennis courts, and that was all wrapped up in the new tennis courts and the old tennis courts and what we were going to do and so forth. And that was the first discussion of that. And the first notation that I could find that referred to this as a sort of a gateway project was actually from an email from Denise, which was in January of 2014. And then also in January of 2014, the agreement between the town of Boothbay Harbor and the school district was reviewed and essentially reaffirmed that area is for recreational use. It will be maintained by the school unless they give it up entirely, in which case it'll be maintained by the town. And it also at that time reaffirmed that the new tennis courts that were built were open for the public when they're not in use by the schools. The first real discussion of what to do with that area that I saw in the record was in March of 2014, and it was discussed at a Board of Selectmen meeting, and at that time suggestions were solicited from the public, and I think there was a Register article that covered that, and we got a number of emails and contacts and letters about what to do. And shortly after that, actually the Register conducted an online poll in April of 2014. And there were 528 votes. 30% suggested a basketball court or courts, 17% suggested a community garden, 14% suggested a dog park, 10% suggested additional parking, 4% suggested volleyball courts, 17% suggested a community pool, and 8% suggested don't do anything. But that was a fairly substantial number of respondents. Now, they weren't all Boothbay Harbor, it was from the peninsula, and so it was a combination of everybody who had a vested interest in it. In May of 2014, we first, I think, contacted Danielle Betts to come up with some plans or sketches, and in August of 2014, she emailed us a couple of we discussed various plans in August of 2014, and in October, Danielle provided 2 preliminary plans. And then not much happened that winter because it was a busy winter with a lot of snow, and the tennis courts seemed like a little bit of a lower priority item. So it was back on the agenda in May of 2015, this spring, and Danielle came to the June 8th meeting and presented those 2 plans. And then in the July 13th meeting, Mike came and presented an alternative or another plan. It's not an alternative, it was an extension really of that. And then Daniel was back on July 27th and presented some revised plans, which I think are these 2, which I think she has a big poster board of. And that meeting engendered a lot of additional discussion, and the gateway discussion was reopened, and pickleball was introduced and discussed. and that generated this plan to have a workshop tonight. So that's sort of the history of what we've done over the last 2 years on this topic. So that's the history.
Right. So we will, I think it's probably fair to say that, that there's been a fair amount of interest for basketball courts. Certainly at the last meeting, we also heard some interest for pickleball court. And I know that some of us on the board feel very strongly that we really would like the whole appearance and the landscaping of the, particularly the parking area, to be improved and to meet our current codes, and so that we present, so that the area presents itself as a more positive gateway, I'll use that term, to the town. But I will, I'm going to just note that it's almost 10 after 7, and there are an awful lot of people who showed up tonight, so I sense there's a fair amount of interest in this topic, and I would just like to open it up to those of you in the audience who have an opinion and have a comment and would like to share your thoughts with us. Now's a great time. Raise your hand. State your name, please, and the town that you're from.
Were you addressing me?
Mr. Tomko.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Mike Tomko, Booth Bay Harbor, 59 Rhodes End. Thanks, Bill, for the summary. That's great. It's good to know where we came from. I just wanted to let everyone know that there's been discussion amongst a number of individuals, and one of my friends and clients is named Don Layton, who has come up with some suggestions as you look at this concept, and I gave you a latest draft of Don's work.
Is that this one, Mike?
Yes, yeah.
Actually, I'll pass it around the
No,
audience if you
I've
want.
got copies if,
Okay.
for anyone that's interested, and I'll just give this to Tony, and if you'd like to pass them around, you're more than welcome to. We had a small get-together with a few individuals in town, represented the chamber and business and others, and they had talked about that this is it's called like a once-in-a-lifetime project, or a lifetime project. It's going to be here forever, so whatever we decide, it should be thoughtful. And the concept that Don has drawn up, which you have, and there's just one version, a larger version of it, his idea was to work from the edges and to be able to give you a place to start. There's been talk about that this is a scenic area and it's part of a gateway term, and we have the history with Al Sherman that spent the time and effort, and we think that needs to be recognized. There's monuments there that are all incorporated into the plan, but this plan shows what's called a reinforced turf area in the center, and that uses the existing gravel that's already been laid there, and it has sod that's put over the top of it, and that leaves for a variety of recreational uses. Now, according to the American Planners Institute and the American Institute of Architects, there are two definitions for recreation. One is active and the other is passive. Active are things like organized sports, baseball, softball, soccer, things like that. And passive recreation can be anything from kite flying and frisbee to parks, a trailhead that starts off exercise, tai chi, things like that. So the nice thing about having the reinforced turf area in the center, it doesn't commit you to one direction in one way or another, but it gives you the opportunity to slowly and thoughtfully think about what are going to be the next steps. It lets you invest the infrastructure at the perimeter, at the edges, and then leaves the area for development. Whether it's, as Russ has suggested, about maybe adding some type of icon, something that's significant, something that everyone can agree with, that's historical or true to the town, flagpole honored for veterans, Al Sherman, things like that, or not. But this gives some flexibility. So this was Don's attempt at giving everyone an idea of where possibly at least to start the process. Don was involved significantly with the Whale Park, and the two elements that he said that were really important are the funding of it and are the support. And the funding can easily be done through raising funds that are private and can deal for private construction, private maintenance of it, donations. Like the Whale Park was funded with the bricks. It was a fabulous idea. And you can actually look at it from Google Earth and you can see the whale. This also could be funded in that matter, using that similar model. And then also in terms of the maintenance, areas can be taken on by whether it's the garden club, the Boy Scouts, something from the schools that can get involved and choose a particular area. You can buy a tree. So this was designed and intended as a springboard for discussion. So I hope you find it useful and helpful.
Mike, in looking at this and looking at your prior iteration, which is very similar,
Yes.
but in the prior iteration, you talked about in phase 2 of adding multi-use courts, basketball, horseshoes, tetherball, pickleball, but I don't see that in this version. I see just the reinforced turf. What's the reasoning behind that?
Conversations that Don and I have had with others in the community seem to indicate that by the street, within the first couple hundred feet, the area doesn't necessarily support the concept of sport in terms of active recreation. It's a visual buffer right next to the street, and it represents more of a passive type of recreation area. So if you were to look longer term and wanted some type of court or active recreation, there certainly is other areas or other spaces within the school area or along the back side. So it was left to keep things flexible. And but the comments that we had heard was that being a gateway type of visual presentation was that it didn't really support. This is not what necessarily that people felt the tourists coming in, the residents would necessarily see and enjoy. There are basketball courts across the street in the parking lot for the YMCA.
That where they park the buses?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one. No one plays on those courts.
Okay, can we have one, George, you'll have your time to speak.
Sure.
Okay, let
So,
Mike finish.
That's all. It's just a matter of providing some flexibility.
All right, thanks.
So I hope you find that useful.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Sure.
Okay,
Can I just say one thing, Mike? I'm assuming the sod overlay then allows this to be utilized if we would have a sort of iconic gateway idea that folks would generally agree upon, be it the giant lobster or a fishing boat or something, that having this be open space allows for additional tweaking if we really felt there could be something that was iconic as sort of a welcome to the community.
That's correct. The
Okay.
idea was to preserve the effort that's gone into it
Right.
and to leave options open. So,
Great. Thanks so much for all your work on this.
sure.
great. Okay, somebody else like to offer a comment or idea? Russ?
I'm Russ Brackett from Harbor Tech Solutions, and I've been working fairly closely with Mike, and we had a pretty comprehensive meeting yesterday with a variety of folks in the region, and it seemed to all revolve around this idea of the same thing like I talked about last time I was here, this vision of something that the town could be proud of, the historic value of what we're trying to promote in the town to the residents and the visitors coming in. I like the idea that we've come up with for a number of phases for this thing. It allows for different funding to be promoted, along the way. We can do one section and then a year or two later we can do something else, because it's not going to be an inexpensive deal to create a really nice park. So that being said, a couple of the other thoughts that I had, I love the idea of the gateway park, but I also like the idea of incorporating what Al Sherman had done for the community. And I really would submit that you consider, I'd love to name this thing the Sherman Family Park. You know, and pretty much get rid of the gateway part of it. That's just a thought that I had. And then the last thing that I have, I had a long discussion last night with Tim Hodgson from Hodgson Yachts, who was very instrumental in the Dory Fisherman's Memorial Project. As a matter of fact, he pretty much did the whole thing. He and his family, and a lot of, we talked about a multitude of subjects, from, you know, the boat, the Bowden, which was done by his father. The thoughts about the America, which was another iconic boat back in the 60s, the replica that was built. There's a lot of things that you can do, not to say you put a full-size boat in there, but, you know, something that we could promote that a lot of the townspeople would remember, and it can go all the way back to, you know, 100 years ago. I had a long talk with Barbara Rumsey about many things that she thought would be, you know, really cool in this place. But there's a million things that you could do. I think that phasing this out is a great idea, because it gives you a chance to, you know, you're not just inputting something all of a sudden. You know, this is a great idea here. It gives you a feeling of the coast, the way Don's put the rocks and the ledges in. And you know, Don was at the meeting yesterday, and I thought he just did a great put together a great project. So, anyways, that's my thoughts now.
Thank you.
Okay, George?
George Franklin, Bay Harbor. While I agree, Mike, this is nice, I don't understand why you would take the courts out of it, knowing that for 40 years there was 2 tennis courts there that were used daily, sometimes all winter long. The notion that no one's gonna use a basketball court or a tennis court because it's too close to the road, I think was proven over the course of 40 years not to be true. I mean, you could put 2 tennis courts there today, and there would be standing room only waiting to use them all summer long. There's a shortage of courts. To have this land, which was traditionally used as a park for sports and recreation, and to take it and turn it into more dandelions, makes no sense to me. While the landscaping's nice and it can be incorporated, to eliminate courts of any type, whether it's pickleball, basketball, or tennis, makes no sense. It had the same attraction as this, as long as you add the courts now. If we don't do it now, it's never gonna happen. And Russell, I think it's always been called Sherman Field. I mean, for the last,
Well, I'm talking about the park itself.
well, that is part of it.
Okay.
Sherman Field is, I mean, it's all one piece of property, and it's all destined to be a park. It's always gonna be a park, we know that. Can't change it. But just to turn it into a grassland makes no sense to me.
Okay, yes.
Hi, I'm Janet Brennan, and I live in Booth Bay. I'm here for pickleball, and I just feel as though this is a wonderful new sport that has come in and has grown from last year from 6 or 7 people to 26, 30 people that come all the time. It's in the newspapers, tensions as pickleball, tennis try to coexist together. I think it's, you know, I think it's a great spot for it. I don't say that that's the only spot for it, but I don't know where else it could be. I can't imagine you're going to put pickleball courts up at the high school unless you decide that you're going to take what you have already. You've put a lot of money into what you have. I don't know if any more land is available and that if it can coexist is allowed to be on the high school property. But I do feel as though this is a great new sport. I think a lot of people who come here as tourists or visitors that are staying are playing pickleball now, and it's going to get more and more, and I think it's great for young people. As far as, you know, a lot of people can't play tennis, even as a young high school student, but pickleball is easier, and I think you're going to bring in some people that are, young people that aren't so athletic, and then they can do this, because it's a great sport. I mean, I'm not athletic at all, and I love it. So, anyway, that's how I feel.
Okay.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, my name is Wendy Burke. I live in Booth Bay, but I have a business here in the harbor. I have a question for Janet. You said that there are about 26 or 30 people that are playing
Right,
pickleball.
yeah.
Where they're playing now?
Right now, we're using the tennis courts, which we can use if the kids aren't using it, or if there's any space
So
available.
at the lawn?
They're not, no, at
No.
the high school.
The school
They're
courts.
not marked, so it takes a half hour to mark the courts every week. That's a possibility, but they didn't really want us to mark the courts, so they can't be marked. And it's true that as it gets bigger and bigger, you can't go independent, it's available, because the kids from the high school are there, possibly. And so I think we do need pickleball courts, but I don't know if there's an alternative land that you were talking, someone saying high school, I mean, where would it be?
That's a good question, and I don't have the answer to
Yeah,
it.
right, so we don't have an alternative right now.
Perhaps not. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I'm a pickleball fan too.
Can you refresh our
I'm
memory
Rob
who you
Fisher
are?
from Booth Bay.
Okay, thanks.
I'm a pickleball fan as well. And the extension of that entire high school area, which is all sports, could be easily, this is an adjunct to that, another sport, or another two sports. So it's nice to have this thing, but to promote athleticism is also nice for tourists when they see it. Back on the pickleball, our pickleball people have grown by 3 or 4% times because of the people coming back from Florida and being here in the summer. Which means, and we know that it's a big thing throughout the Florida area and around the country, and it's getting bigger and bigger. And when they come up here, that's the only place they have to play. And I know during the last meeting, there was a concern about the green space. Well, when you build a tennis court, you don't need a full tennis court. You can play on half a tennis court. Normally, all people want to do is play hoops or one-on-one or two-on-two and so forth. You don't need an entire basketball court.
Great, thank you. Okay. George, you already had a turn. Does someone else want to speak before we go around a second time?
Richard Shea, Atlantic Ave, Booth Bay Harbor. I think I just read in the register that for Booth Bay, there's a couple of lots the town's trying to sell that would be perfect for pickleball. I look at this as a unique spot in Booth Bay Harbor. We don't have a lot of land. I like this open plan that can be built on. I see maybe a gazebo going in there, a band shell going in there, that's something the town doesn't have right now. A lot of people come to the library lawn Thursday nights because it's nostalgic, it's a small town, old town, typical small town America. I would hate to see a court go back there. I don't think it added anything pretty to the town, especially where the courts have already been replaced.
Okay, thanks. Palmer?
Yeah, Palmer Payne, forgive me for not standing up because I'm not as athletic as a lot of these people.
That's okay.
And I know nothing more about pickleball than it seems to be an elitist sport from the two people I know at the Lion that I see all the time that play it, because they both have rackets, paddles. Looks like a ping pong paddle, but they cost $74 a piece. And that doesn't seem to fit within the general character of the town of Booth Bay Harbor.
Well, I don't consider myself an elitist.
I think I could make one out of a piece of plywood instead of two, but,
It costs at least $150.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's not, I mean, how many people in this town, if you really know the character of the families of this town, can dump $150 on specialized athletic gear?
Tennis courts are filled all the time.
So,
I thought you were saying
Okay.
that people brought these up from Florida. I misunderstood.
That's the pickleball, not the tennis. I'm just saying the tennis rackets cost a heck of a lot more than the pickleball rackets.
Well, it depends. I have 6 of them under my bed.
okay, thanks, Palmer. Mr. Royal?
I'm Bill Royal, I'm from Pratt's Island.
Is that Booth Bay Harbor, Bill?
Well, no, actually, it's on,
all right, just
it's
wanted
on
to be clear.
Southport, but
All right.
We live on the poor part of Pratt Island. I think you've got all these different ideas, but this is an important little piece of land, and I think you should open it up to a design competition. And open it, like, get it out of the discussion phase and into the competition phase. Select a panel of judges, and that will enable you to move on, because you've been on this for 2 years. A lot of slow, patient work, and it's obvious that you want to continue moving forward. So I think basically open it up to this design competition and let the chips fall where they may. Have a panel of judges.
We already have the judges,
I think you're looking at
Really?
it.
6 of them.
Okay, ma'am.
Hi, hobble up here. As I said before, my name is Lindy Bragg. I live in Booth Bay, but I have Calypso here in the harbor. I am listening to all this. I mean, this is the first meeting I've been to, so I'm kind of new at all this, but I guess I have to speak for the people that are from away that are only here for a day or two. And I think that it's really important for us to really highlight the beauty of this town. I mean, it takes getting all the way into town before you get to the library lawn, and before you get to the water, and before you get to the wheel park, and all those beautiful spots. And I just think it's really important in that stretch. You've got the Y and the school and the huge football field with the lights, and then businesses on the other side. It would just be a perfect spot for something pretty. And whether it be, it done in phases, as Michael and Russ talked about, or whatever. Or, I don't know, maybe there is room in the back for a pickleball court or something. I'm not sure. But I just think that honoring the integrity of this town is really important to me, anyway.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't want to throw a fly in the discussion ointment here, but when I think of a gateway has two sides. And when I look at this, I walk by this 3 times a week, and I think this is a really important piece of real estate. But I also know this is not a gateway, because what's on the other side is asphalt parking and a laundromat and things that...
1,000 feet of the school.
Well, yeah, well, there are some things that frankly defy beautification at this point. So I'm trying to think, how do we think of this as a comprehensive gateway into the town? Because frankly, it's on one side of the street, and it can be lovely on one side of the street. But when I think of a gateway, I think of something that makes you feel as if you had entered into something that differentiates, the space that you are going into from what you have just left. And it's going to be hard to do this when you just have sort of a unilateral one-side presentation. So I just want to put that out there, that I do think beautification is really important. In fact, if you go back and look at the selectmen tapes, I'm the one that says, hey, remember, beautification was the top priority, not necessarily more sports. But I am a little concerned that we are making this more transformative in our minds and discussion than what one plot of land does in a long corridor of businesses and asphalt and parking and Rite Aid and everything else. Now, I think it's great that the chamber is frankly very close to this, nearly across the street. And so there could be some things we could think of creatively to sort of make that a more welcoming corridor that links people up with the chamber in a way that welcomes them to the community, which we hadn't really talked about. But I do think it is predominantly for the people that are visiting here, probably more on short stays, who we want to have them come in this community and say, wow, I am so glad I drove down 27 behind the RV and all the other things that were coming down here, and it was worth it. So, you know, I'm very much in favor of the beautification. I just want to think a little more comprehensively about how we achieve what we want, which is something that feels transformative. Wow, I have entered Booth Bay Harbor. And I'm not sure we're quite there yet.
So far, I've seen 3 designs for this area, and they all look beautiful. So no matter what you put inside of it, it looks beautiful from the outside. You have all those flowers, you have the stones and so forth, it's going to look beautiful no matter what's inside. And we need you on the pickleball court.
I'm old enough I can be there, so.
Tony?
My name is Tony Cameron, Executive Director of the Booth Bay Harbor Region Chamber. Wendy, I would agree with you 100% that this is just a piece of the puzzle, but I think it's an important piece of the puzzle, and I think it's a great start. I think that allowing for the flexibility to take the time to really think about what goes in there is incredibly important, because, you know, if we throw in, you know, a recreational court of some sort, you know, that could be, you know, it could be a trend now, but it might not be 10 years down the road. And this is something that's, you know, it should be a piece of the pie or a piece of the puzzle that says, you've arrived to Booth Bay Harbor, we welcome you. It's something that's iconic, something that's representative of the businesses, the community, everybody. And I think that there is a place for recreational courts, because that's all a piece of making quality of life for everybody here. But this is, I think that Michael's, you know, point to kind of start with this, and then have the ability to really think about something that might be iconic that goes in there. You know, if the demand is there, put a court in there, you know, but, you know, honestly, I think that you can think of, you know, what, especially in the terms of recreational, you know, what could be there that meets those requirements, still is an iconic gateway part of the puzzle, and everyone is proud of. You're never going to have 100% of everyone's behind you, but I think that I think that the number of people who have come up to me and talked to me about this is they really want to see something going that's beautiful, that's nice, sooner than later, but they also want to take the time to make sure that it is exactly what people can get behind. And I think that Michael's concept really paves that way for that. So.
Thanks, Tony.
Annette?
Stormont, Booth Bay Harbor. I think the one thing to bear in mind is that it will look nice for people driving past, coming in, but I doubt very highly that it'll be a draw for the visitors. They're going to go into town, and I think the primary concern for developing it should be how best it will serve the community as a whole. You know, will the community use it just as a park, or will there have to be something else there to encourage them to utilize the space? You know, I don't argue with the idea of the overall improvement of the facade area. I think that definitely would enhance the whole picture. But I think the primary concern, more than this gateway concept, should be how it's best going to serve the citizens of the town and the community.
Hi, Janet Brennan again. When Russ spoke about this last time, he talked about, you know, a lobster, a tourist attraction, this big tourist attraction. I mean, there's no parking to speak of that would be a tourist attraction. We would be creating a really a problem if this place was, you know, I think Clifton, the park for the children, it would be a great place for the type of item he was speaking about last time. I don't think we want a tourist attraction as they come in town, that's for sure. I mean, it's fine to look at, but the kids climb all over it, and it, you know, it just sounded as though there wasn't a space that really was appropriate for a large group of people coming in. I don't object to the idea of having it, but I don't think that's the proper place.
Okay, yeah.
I guess I'm a glass half full here. I think there is room to get pieces of what everyone wants. I mean, we all want the same thing. We want something nice there. We have a little bit different lenses about how to get there. But I actually think there is enough room to have a sports court. And I think that's important because I feel some obligation to the probably 150 votes that we should have a basketball court. And that is a community. That's something the locals will use as well as the tourists. And I pick up on York's sentiment. I think the most important thing here in terms of visual impact is the setting the asphalt back from the road, from doing the landscaping. And in fact, the basketball courts are pretty flat. And so if you do the landscaping right, what your eye will see is the landscaping, not the basketball court. And I think it's essential that we do that landscaping. I agree with that 100%. And I think we all feel that here. So the question is, what do you do after that? And I think there's enough room to have a basketball court. And what I might suggest, Danielle, can we put up your poster board
Sure.
so I can point to stuff?
I didn't bring an easel. Can we lean it on this side?
Well,
Yeah.
this is for the parking.
And I will say, this isn't mine. This was the original rendering that Don Layton did.
Okay.
Before he came up with the second
Yeah.
option, which showed
Yeah.
he turned 45 degrees so that there was green space on both sides of the
Yeah.
court, which is shown in plan view.
Right, and he didn't quite flesh out the way you did the green spaces out here, which I think are very important, because that's all looks like just asphalt right now. And to push that back and get some green space, in here, I think will make the extended, the distance along there look much nicer. I might pull the pickleball court out, and we talked last time about you could stripe this for 2 pickleball courts, and so you could have that. Physics wins again. And then maybe we think about what to put in this area that could be an iconic, it could be welcoming, it could be a flagpole, it could be something more than that that might draw your eye. And then there's room, I think, back here for benches and perhaps a playground that Tricia, you had talked about. So I actually think we can kind of have our cake and eat it too here, and that's the way I'd lean at this point in time.
Yes, sir?
York Fisher again. I think we already have the gateway built by Paul Cologne, and the X next door to it. That's the entrance to the Booth Bay area, and that sure shows what we're doing here. And this would be a great extension, and what Bill is saying is absolutely true. Everybody can get what they want. It seems we can put basketball, we can put pickleball, we can put and some icon, but you're right. The room is there to do all of it.
I think so.
Other comments from people? Oh,
One
George?
last comment, Denise, to
Okay.
Brian Booth Bay Harbor. You know, I've never been to a community where you drove past a school complex where they had a nice ball field and a series of fields and lights, where folks aren't wowed by it, say, hey, look at that. And I think it's more important for us to think in terms of somebody driving past that with all these courts and ball fields and whatnot, and have them say, geez, look at that nice school, maybe I want to move my business here. I think we're missing the point. To try to attract 2 months' worth of business with really the only ball field in town, turn it into a grass green spot, I think is wrong. I think we need to continue, as Bill said, to make it look nicer and add the courts, and maybe somebody will someday drive by and say, hey, we're in this town. We've got all these courts and places to recreate and play, and not just someplace to go meditate next to the highway.
All right, sir, just let me just poll the rest of the crowd. Does anybody else who hasn't spoken yet have anything that they'd like to offer? No? Okay. One last comment?
The tourists are going to come anyhow, no matter what we put there. So we should start thinking more about the residents. What do we have the rest of the year?
Okay. Good.
I-
Board members.
Yeah, at the risk of being tarred and feathered and being run out of town, if you picked up the latest edition of Maine Magazine, which has Townsend Gut on the front of it, and has a whole big section on, kind of visit Boothbay. If you look in the article, actually most of the pictures are taken on Southport. Yes, well, that was surprising to me. But, in some ways, when I think about this, I think about the Boothbay region. And we sit here because we're the harbor selectmen. And the Boothbay guys sit up there because they're the Boothbay selectmen. But frankly, most people that come here to visit, they think they're coming to Boothbay or Boothbay Harbor, and they don't know where the town line is. They don't know what the gateway is. In fact, I bet if you ask most people, they think the gateway is up there where the farmer's market is, because that kind of starts the town and the feeling and everything else. The botanical garden is off that way. And so in some sense, I don't want us to get sort of mired in our own parochialism of thinking we need to have something right here that says this is Boothbay Harbor, because I think to most people, we're parsing something that is invisible to them. They think of this as kind of the Boothbay region, and it's all beautiful, but we're aware of the differences, but I don't think most of the tourists are aware of the differences. And particularly if people in Maine who publish Maine Magazine can't tell Southport from Boothbay Harbor, I doubt a lot of the tourists are really telling the difference. So, if we really want to think about what really makes us have a statement about a gateway that enters into the Boothbay region, which has lots of things to offer, both in Boothbay and Boothbay Harbor, that we ought to be emphasizing, then maybe the gateway needs to be a little bit more proximate in the sense of you are entering the peninsula. And Mike, this sort of goes with your marketing group that talks about the Boothbay Peninsula as the place that really is where we want tourists to come. Boothbay Harbor residents and innkeepers, they need things like the garden in Boothbay to draw people in and have them stay and go to the restaurants. And we need to think about our draw in a more comprehensive way, in my mind. And I think the beautification, the landscaping, we ought to make every green space as lovely as we can, because making our town lovely is something that we want to be proud of. I don't want any more asphalt lining the main entry into town. Will this become sort of the iconic gateway? I would probably say I might have a different view about what really says you're entering a place that's going to make you feel transformed. I forget what your statement was, Mike, from the marketing committee, but it was sort of
Surround yourself.
Yeah, surround yourself. And I drive to Augusta every day, and when I go around near Boothbay and head towards home, I am surrounding myself and I feel totally different and at peace. And I think that's what we want tourists to feel when they come here. So I think about this in a slightly different way than the conversation has gone tonight. And I think the beautification can occur to accommodate things that are done tastefully and maybe pushed back by landscaping so they're not so visible from the road, because these are low structures, and we can accommodate the desires of most everyone. Anyway, I think it's a wonderful discussion for us to have with everyone in the town, and it highlights how all of us really care about how our town is perceived. I think that's the most important thing. Yeah.
Mike.
Thank you, Wendy. I just wanted to build on your comments, and I'm in entire agreement with you. Tom and I attended a meeting, what was that, a few weeks ago, up in Boothbay, that was hosted by Dan Pryor, talking about the possible redevelopment at Clifford Park, and they're in conceptual phases as well. So I know there's opportunity for space there. What that is, I'm not sure, but it supports what you're saying, which is to think about this as a regional aspect. You know, those are certainly athletic fields, and there was all a number of ideas about development up there. So I agree entirely, and I like the idea about being flexible and being low impact and sustainable, and making this something that the community as well as the residents are going to be proud of.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'd like to see things greener. I think we as a board have said, we'd like to see a greener community. We'd like to see more sidewalks. We'd like to, if we had our big wish list, we'd like to see more bike paths.
I noticed one on here.
Well, but I mean, I think that going forward, we need, and as we study the comprehensive plan in our board meetings over the next year, those are some of the goals that we really want to pull out of it. And when we have opportunities going forward for projects, I think those are the big themes that we want to constantly kind of keep in the forefront, and take advantage of them when we can. So, even though some of that might mean a little bit more work for our Public Works Department, i.e. sidewalks, but for to the extent that we can promote, I think, a more walkable community, it will make for a healthier population and healthier and happier residents. And I think that's really one of the goals that we want to try to work towards.
Denise, can I just add a couple of things that
Absolutely.
Chris and
Sure.
I thought about 2 years ago when we were looking at this spot? One of the thoughts that we had was to keep the courts as far away from the road as possible for safety reasons. When you do the kitty corner arrangement there's a pretty good chance that if somebody's blocking a basketball, it's going to go into the parking lot. So that's why we originally started there. And there's also an existing pad that's there that if you build it on that existing pad, the way the top left design is, you don't have to rearrange and restructure all the stuff underneath that. But I would bet that the original tennis courts that were put there were probably put in that direction to orient for the sun. So you didn't have someone on one end of the court facing into the sun all the time, because they tended to run north-south rather than more east-west as these are. We also looked at where the underground lighting is for the field. There's lighting there that would, if we wanted to do a phase down the road where somebody could turn on a timer and play basketball at night for an hour and then the lights go out, that would work. I don't think you'd want to do that if the courts are that much closer to the road. I think you'd want that away from the road just for the safety hazard. So those are just some of the things that as we proceed on with this, we sort of factor in, I think.
Thanks.
Good, thanks. Okay, George?
What's your time frame for completion?
2 years ago.
I can't answer that.
I would like to get this moving, because it's been 2 years. And there are some phase things we can do. I think we can, I don't want to speak for the board, but the concept of doing the landscaping for the parking lot and the corners and stuff, I think goes ahead no matter what we put in the middle. And so we could, I think, move ahead on that.
How much damage would you have if you put that in and then you decided to do the courts? Wouldn't you want some of the courts to get in before?
Well, you'd leave an opening so you
No,
can.
that's not,
Yeah.
you can allow for that.
May I just
Yeah.
ask a pickleball question? I've gone to the tennis courts and I haven't found the pickleballers there during the time, so I haven't had the opportunity to ask them on Tuesday or Thursday between 9 and 11.
They've been there, but maybe with this heat, they
Sure.
haven't been as much, because I haven't gone because of the company.
Can pickleball be played on a asphalt surface?
Sure.
For example, like a parking lot? So is it possible to have,
Well, I think-
as long as
I'm
it's
not-
level and flat?
I would imagine, I don't know the difference between the asphalt and the tennis courts, how they're made, but it's comfortable to be on the tennis court. I don't know how much difference it would be.
If it's
I mean,
smooth, if it could be smooth.
Right, and asphalt, I think if you fell, which you do, would be a little worse than falling on a tennis court, I think.
I grew up in a Catholic grade school where we spent our lunch hours on asphalt and everybody fell, so.
Yeah, well, I'm a little older falling, so.
Sure, but as long as
Yes,
the
I like-
criteria says flat and smooth and well drained and somewhat cushioned.
Yeah, I would assume, I don't know the difference between a tennis court and the asphalt.
Only
Okay.
decreed.
Yeah,
I just would be concerned about the safety of it.
okay, great. Any more comments for the board? I'm
Good luck.
seeing, okay. Okay.
Denise, do you have money set aside for this yet?
We do have a little bit of money set aside, yes, we do. Yeah,
It was in the
Yeah.
budget.
Depending where we go,
So-
we're gonna have to put more in.
yeah.
Yeah.
But, okay, thanks for your comments and your input tonight. As I mentioned before, this is not a regular selectmen's meeting, so no decisions were going to be made tonight. We were really kind of looking for input and opportunity to kind of talk, and so appreciate everything everybody has had to offer.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks very much. Do you want a motion to approve the warrants?
Yeah, we need to,
At 7:54.
I'll do these minutes, but.
Okay, and we're here except for Russ.
Hey, Bill, thanks for coming.
I move we approve the warrants upon careful review.
I second that. Bill moved and I second the approval of warrants on careful review.
Any reason you want to
Okay,
keep
all in
this
favor?
accountable or anything?
Yes,
I would,
yes,
yeah.
I think that would be
That'd be
great.
terrific.
Let's leave it then. Then I won't forget it.
That's terrific.
Thanks, Danielle.
Thanks, Danielle.
Well, all in favor? Do we vote? Okay, great. All right.
Yes.
Well, I don't.
Is this on your next agenda?
We haven't set the agenda, but I imagine it will be.
Probably, yeah. Palmer, did you
Strike
have
while the
something
iron is hot.
important? Did you have something important? Did you have something you wanted to say,
I
Palmer?
got a couple of things. Money.
Oh, yeah.
Money?
Why don't you, if you can?
Okay, because we're not technically having a real meeting tonight. We're not having a real meeting tonight.
Well, I didn't know that.
Okay.
Could I have about 5 minutes to
Can it-
talk
can
about two
it-
topics that are very important?
Can it
concerning
wait?
the town's money?
Can it wait? Well, we're not having a real meeting. Can it wait till the first meeting in September?
I don't even know if I'll be here the 1st of September.
Keep going.
I think the gateway's fine, except the gateway, as you know, is moving center.
Well,
No, can I just talk, I want to
Yeah.
talk about the ambulance service first of all. Very poignant and to the point.
okay. 1 minute.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, no, I just had a recent experience, as you may know,
Yes.
with the ambulance service. I have my bill here. The ambulance service has come, they've monitored and moaned as usual, as they have for decades. And I have some numbers on an individual basis. This is one ride from Miles Hospital, from my house, 19 miles,
That was good.
and the total charge is $987.50, of which one of my insurance supporters, Medicare, which I paid them a substantial amount. I don't have that much, but it's about $857.64. They still want more money. Now, you can't tell me that it costs $52 a mile to have an ambulance crew and an ambulance go both ways.
Oh, Palmer, I'm afraid that you can.
Well, we've asked them, I've been in this room twice over the past 10 years, when people have said, what is the actual cost to you of sending the crew and getting them back, and we've never gotten more than a mealy-mouthed answer.
Well, that would be a
Well-
good question for them to answer, but it's just like a small hospital and an emergency room. You have to have all the infrastructure present that make that ride $50 a mile, basically. So,
And they're going to charge you what they can from a Medicare and from a federal allowance perspective. So,
Has anybody talked to the basic problem of this? When you start talking about the federal responsibility?
well,
How many people have written how many
Pro-
letters to Shelley Pingree, which is the basic point, this is not politics, this is money. It's the only way you have access to the federal government, is through Congress. Point number 2, I believe it was last Thursday, most, if not all, of the rolling stock of the police department went to another town,
Oh, what?
including most of the people on duty, right?
I'm sorry, what was
You
that?
tell
What
me
do
what
you
you're
mean?
talking about.
What do you mean?
I wasn't there. 3 people have witnessed 3 police units go to Southport last Thursday
Well,
That's not
we're-
at a high rate of speed. That's all right.
It's not unusual.
With your fire departments, you have what's known as mutual aid. We all know what mutual means. One hand washes the other. Unfortunately, with Southport and Booth Bay, it's a one-way deal. Our tax money goes rolling out of town to other towns that don't pay us a dime. At one time, Southport called on our, it happened to be 2 summers in a row, on our harbor master to take care of stuff on Squirrel Island. Southport had a harbor master, but they didn't have a boat. Ha ha ha, Booth Bay Harbor taxpayers paid for that too. Isn't it about time that these towns got together and somehow we get reimbursed for sending our police department to do the job of 2 other towns that do nothing for us? That's all I want you to think about.
Thanks, Palmer.
Thank you, Palmer.
Thank you, Palmer.
Thanks for bringing those things to our attention.
Really.
So, Tom, I think we can close the meeting at 7:59.
So moved, movement to
Okay.
adjourn.
Second.
Okay.
Yes.